Stop. You think being unforgettable to women is about looks, money, or luck. That's the lie that keeps you invisible. Here's the truth. Women forget 90% of men, not because they're ugly, but because they're predictable, ordinary, and weak. And unless you break out of that cage today, you will remain another faceless man in the background of her memory. You're standing at a crossroads. Either you embrace the dark frameworks that few men dare to use, or you die in silence, forgotten, ignored, erased. Which man are you going to be? 500 years ago, Machiavelli wrote a guide on power that terrified rulers, kings, and popes. Why? Because he revealed the forbidden principles of influence. And today, I'll show you how those same truths make you unforgettable to women. Drop this in the comments to lock in your decision. I refuse to be invisible. Number 1. The law of scarcity. Stop giving yourself away like cheap currency. Every time you make yourself too available, you drain your own value in her eyes. What is rare is always desired, and what is common is ignored. When you are constantly present, texting, calling, showing up at every moment, your presence loses its power. You become like background noise, easy to tune out, easy to replace. Scarcity, on the other hand, triggers something primal. It creates curiosity, tension, and eventually obsession. Think about it. You send her good morning every single day, without fail. You respond instantly whenever she wants attention. You become predictable, and predictability kills desire. Suddenly, she's fascinated by someone else, the man who barely notices her, who keeps his time guarded, who doesn't hand over every ounce of energy just to earn her smile. Why? Because scarcity forces her to invest, to chase, to wonder. The less of you she can easily access, the more she values the moments when she does. Your absence, when used with intent, is more powerful than your presence. Withholding attention makes your time look like gold, and gold is never ignored. Comment this now. My time is my weapon. Once she sees you as scarce, you stop being forgettable and start becoming unforgettable. Number 2, the shadow of mystery. Predictable men are boring. They expose every thought, every feeling, every detail of their lives as if it were a charity auction, and then wonder why no one wants to keep bidding. The truth is simple. People do not value what they fully understand. When you lay yourself bare without restraint, you strip yourself of intrigue. What is left? A man who is entirely known and therefore easily dismissed. Stop confusing honesty with oversharing. Honesty does not mean turning your soul into a diary for others to read at will. Mystery is the oxygen of attraction. It keeps the fire burning because it leaves space for imagination. And imagination will always paint a man in colors brighter and darker than his words ever could. When she doesn't fully know you, she begins to invent you in her mind. That fantasy becomes intoxicating, far more powerful than anything you could explain. Every unforgettable man carries a shadow, a part of himself that cannot be touched, cannot be easily understood. That shadow is what lingers, what fascinates, what burns into memory long after the conversation ends. Respect, tinged with uncertainty, commands more power than predictable affection ever will. Comment this now. Mystery makes me unforgettable. Because when mystery is paired with control, something explosive happens. Number 3, the frame of control. Stop letting women dictate the frame of interaction. The moment you step into her rhythm, following her agenda, waiting for her approval, dancing to her tune, you've already surrendered. Real power doesn't shout, it whispers. True control is invisible, yet it dominates everything around it. The man who holds the frame never needs to prove himself. He simply decides, and the world adapts. Think of the difference. You show up late, not with excuses or apologies, but with the quiet authority of someone whose time bends reality. You end the conversation while the energy is still alive, while she's still hooked, forcing her to think of you long after you've walked away. You never chase, because chasing means she's leading. Instead, you set the pace, and the one who sets the pace owns the game. Psychology makes it clear, whoever controls the frame also controls the memory. She doesn't remember the men who gave her everything she asked for. She remembers the one man she couldn't bend, couldn't predict, couldn't dominate. That imprint lasts because it strikes at her subconscious. Drop this in the comments. I set the frame. Because here's the truth. When you master control over yourself, you become untouchable. And the less she controls you, the more unforgettable you become. Number 4, the power of emotional contrast. Stop being nice all the time. Constant niceness is emotional flatline, and a flatline, in psychology and in life, always equals death. Death of desire, death of memory, death of attraction. Niceness that never changes, never surprises, never creates tension is not kindness, it's monotony. And monotony is forgettable. The unforgettable man understands the law of emotional contrast. He knows that attraction thrives on highs and lows, not on sameness. He gives warmth, but not endlessly. He smiles, but he also withdraws. He laughs with her, creating a spark of intimacy, but then allows silence or seriousness to cut through, reminding her that he cannot be fully possessed. This unpredictability makes him feel alive, like a storm that can't be mapped or controlled. People chase what they cannot fully predict, because uncertainty hooks the mind. Now here's the paradox. What looks like cruelty on the surface is actually discipline. Endless niceness is cruelty to yourself. It erodes your power and kills her respect. But contrast, delivered with intention, becomes a mercy. It keeps desire alive. It makes your presence matter. Think of it this way. If the sun never set, no one would marvel at the sunrise. It is the darkness that makes the light unforgettable. Every great leader, every figure who commanded loyalty understood this principle. A sudden shift in tone, a calculated withdrawal of affection, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. These contrasts carve themselves into memory. She won't remember the man who was always agreeable, always smiling. She will remember the man who gave warmth like a gift and then, just as easily, reclaimed it. Drop this in the comments. I master contrast. Because when you fuse emotional contrast with selective coldness, you become dangerous in the most magnetic way possible. You don't just capture attention, you control it. And that control is what burns you into her memory forever. Number 5, the discipline of silence. Most men lose respect not through weakness of action, but through weakness of speech. They overshare, they explain, they justify, they beg for validation with their words, as if speaking more will buy them more significance. But every unnecessary word is a withdrawal from their authority. Silence, on the other hand, is a sword. It slices through noise, cuts away weakness, and leaves behind the echo of power. Stop trying to convince her with your mouth. Convincing is a form of submission. The moment you argue, plead, or try to explain yourself, you've already handed her the frame. Words are cheap, but silence, when wielded with discipline, is priceless. You do not need to declare strength if your presence already communicates it. Convince her not with endless talking, but with your absence, your stillness, and the pauses that force her to lean forward, wondering what you're thinking. Silence builds tension, and tension is the architecture of memory. The man who fills every space with chatter becomes invisible, blending into the mass of predictable, desperate voices. But the man who controls silence commands the room. He doesn't chase attention. Attention chases him. Every pause, every withheld word forces others to interpret, to speculate, to imagine. And imagination, once activated, becomes obsession. Think of this. Silence makes people project their own fears, their own desires, onto you. They cannot fully read you, so they create stories in their mind. That mystery amplifies your presence far louder than words ever could. She won't remember the one who drowned her in explanations. She will remember the one who said little, but carried weight with every silence. Drop this in the comments. Silence is my weapon. Because here's the dark truth. Silence doesn't just withhold, it dominates. And when you combine silence with unpredictability, it ceases to be just a weapon. It becomes a psychological trap, one she will never forget. Number 6. The edge of unpredictability. Stop allowing women to predict your next move. Predictability is death to attraction. It's the slow erosion of excitement, the quiet suffocation of desire. When she knows exactly when you'll call, what you'll say, how you'll react, she stops thinking about you. You've become a solved puzzle, and solved puzzles are discarded. Unforgettable men, however, operate with calculated unpredictability. One day, you're playful and engaged, drawing her into laughter and connection. The next, you're unreachable, absorbed in your mission, reminding her that she is not the center of your existence. One day, you give attention generously, like a gift. The next, you withdraw completely, forcing her to crave the return. This emotional instability doesn't weaken attraction, it ignites it. Why? Because anticipation is born not from certainty, but from uncertainty. Psychology proves it. Dopamine spikes hardest in conditions of unpredictability. This is why slot machines and roulette tables hook people for life. They never know when the next hit will come. The brain becomes addicted to the unknown. The same principle applies to attraction. The man who breaks patterns, who refuses to be placed neatly in a box, burns himself into memory. He creates an emotional rhythm she cannot control, which means she cannot stop chasing it. Forgettable men follow patterns. They give attention on schedule. They respond exactly as expected, and they think that consistency equals security. But security without excitement is boredom. Bold men break patterns. Bold men rewrite rules. They understand that fortune does not bless the predictable, it blesses the daring. Drop this in the comments. I am unpredictable power. Because when unpredictability fuses with status, when mystery is paired with authority, the effect is explosive. You don't just attract her attention, you dominate her imagination. And the man who controls imagination is the man who is never forgotten. Number 7. The aura of higher purpose. Stop orbiting her life. Men who circle around women like satellites, waiting for direction, desperate for approval, fade into nothingness. They are remembered, if at all, as background characters, not as main figures. Women forget the men who orbit them, but they never forget the man who makes them orbit around him. And that orbit doesn't come from charm alone, it comes from purpose. You must have a mission bigger than her, a vision so consuming, so immovable, that anyone who steps into your world feels they are stepping into something greater than themselves. Your life must not be defined by her presence, but by your trajectory. When she senses that you'd rather die than abandon your mission, you become unforgettable, not as just a lover, not as a fleeting memory, but as a force of nature. A man with purpose is not competing with others for her attention. She is competing with his destiny. Here lies the psychology. People are magnetically drawn to those who move with certainty. Purpose creates gravity. A man drifting aimlessly communicates weakness, instability, and dependence. But a man with purpose radiates inevitability. He looks untouchable because his life is anchored to something no one else can take away. History remembers men not for their charm, but for their results. A man without purpose leaves no mark, no legacy, no story. But a man with purpose, he becomes myth. His presence is amplified by the shadow of his vision. His words matter because they are backed by action. His silence matters because it carries the weight of direction. Drop this in the comments. My mission makes me unforgettable. Because here is the dangerous twist. If your mission does not command respect, no amount of tricks, words, or strategies will save you. Your purpose is the throne upon which everything else rests. Without it, you are disposable. With it, you become legend. Number 8. The ruthless standard. Stop tolerating disrespect. Every time you allow someone to cross a boundary without consequence, you erase a piece of yourself from their memory. Why? Because you've proven you are not to be taken seriously. You've proven you are forgettable. The man who accepts disrespect communicates, without words, that his value is negotiable, and what is negotiable soon becomes disposable. Unforgettable men, on the other hand, live by ruthless standards, not through tantrums, not through begging, not through threats, but through decisive action. When respect is withheld, they withdraw their presence. When a boundary is crossed, they end the interaction. No explanations, no bargaining. That calm, controlled ruthlessness sends a stronger signal than any emotional outburst ever could. The message is simple. My respect is not optional. Psychology makes it clear. Respect anchors memory far deeper than affection. Affection can fade, lust can shift, love can evolve. But respect leaves a scar in the mind. Even if she doesn't always love you, she will never forget respecting you or fearing the consequences of losing you. The man who enforces standards is not easily replaced because he's not offering what every other man does. He is offering structure, certainty, and the unshakable weight of self-respect. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. By demanding respect, you give others the chance to rise to your level or step aside. And if they step aside, you lose nothing. Because men of standards never chase approval. They understand that approval is cheap, but respect is priceless. Drop this in the comments. Respect over approval. Because here's the final truth. Once you master standards, you move beyond temporary attention. You activate something greater, the eternal imprint. You don't just pass through someone's life, you etch yourself into it. And nothing is more unforgettable than that. Number 9. The legacy imprint. Stop chasing temporary attention. A glance, a compliment, a fleeting night of validation. These are crumbs, not crowns. The man who seeks temporary attention will always find himself hungry again the next day, because attention fades as quickly as it comes. Your goal is not a night. Your goal is a legacy. Unforgettable men are not remembered for how often they texted, how quickly they responded, or how many sweet gestures they performed. Those things dissolve into nothing. They are remembered for the mark they left on a woman's mind, on their environment, and on the story of their time. They live by unshakable principles. They create defining moments. They refuse to exist as ordinary. Their presence lingers long after they've walked away because they've carved an imprint into memory that no replacement can erase. This is why women talk about certain men years later, not because those men were convenient, but because they were irreplaceable. They weren't just part of a moment. They became a reference point, a standard against which every man after them was measured. That is legacy. Consider this truth. People are judged not only by their actions, but by the company they keep. The depth of your legacy can be measured by the women who were drawn into your orbit. Were they forgettable flings, or did they mirror the power, depth, and direction of your vision? As one strategist wrote, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. The same applies to you. The women drawn to you are a reflection of the world you've built. Drop this in the comments. I am a legacy, not a memory. Because legacy is the eternal imprint. Legacy means she may move on with her life, but she will never escape your shadow. She may replace your presence, but she cannot erase your impact. That is the final law of unforgettable men. You don't just exist. You leave something behind that outlives the moment. Final transformation. Climax. Before, you were ordinary. You were available, predictable, desperate for validation, and painfully forgettable. You handed out your time like loose change, hoping someone would see value in it. You revealed everything, begged to be understood, and thought kindness without strategy would make you powerful. But it didn't. It drained you, and it erased you. Now, after unlocking these frameworks, you are no longer that man. You are scarce. Your presence is rare and therefore priceless. You are mysterious. Your silence and shadows fuel imagination stronger than any words ever could. You are in control, not chasing frames, but setting them, bending the rhythm of interaction to your will. You have mastered contrast, silence, unpredictability, purpose, and ruthless standards. You are not noise in the background anymore. You are the storm that defines the memory. This is the transformation. From forgettable to unforgettable. From disposable to irreplaceable. The man who once blended in is gone. In his place stands a figure who cannot be ignored, a force that shapes how others remember, react, and even define themselves. You are no longer a man she forgets. You are the man she never recovers from. Understand this. Your life will never be the same once you wield these laws. They are forbidden for a reason, because they divide the weak from the unforgettable. They create distance between the masses and the few who command memory. And now, you have them. The question is no longer whether you know them. The question is whether you'll use them or stay invisible. If this opened your eyes, smash that like button. Subscribe for more truths most men can't handle, and share this video with someone who needs to wake up to their own power. Final affirmation drop. I refuse to be ordinary. I am unforgettable. Say it, write it, live it. Because ordinary men are forgotten, but men who master these laws, they are remembered forever.